go live now, and I'll let you know when it's actually live streaming. Just bear with us a second, then I'll go back on mute and let you have a chat. Okay, yes, so I believe we are now live.
Hello, my name is Chris. Good evening. I would like to welcome you to Kingston Libraries author event. Today we have acclaimed thriller writer T.M. Logan, who has sold over 1 million copies of his book and has been published in 19 countries. Today, Tim will begin the session by telling us about his latest novel, Trust Me, published earlier this week. We will then have an informal interview about his books and writing. So if you'd like to ask any questions, then please put them into the comments or the chat section, and we'll put them to him. Before we kick off with you telling us a bit about yourself and your latest novel, I would firstly like to say how much I love the new novel, Trust Me. I was hooked from the opening pages and read it all within a day. It is not only beautifully written, but has so many great characters and a plot that keeps you glued to the pages with all its twists and turns. Without further ado, I'll now pass us over to Tim. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, for your kind words about the book. Glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, so Trust Me has just come out. It's my first hardback, and it's just been out a few days now. Came out on the 18th. So it's a psychological thriller, as my other books are. It's my 5th published book, and some of the previous ones you might have heard of are The Holiday or The Catch. Those are my last 2, and my first one to ever get published was called Lies, which was 4 years ago now. So yeah, Trust Me is, as I say, it's a thriller. It starts on a train. The 2 strangers meet on a train, and 2 women. One of them kind of offers to do a small favour for the other one by holding a baby for a moment while this young mum kind of takes a phone call, gets herself a bit sort of organised and sorted out. And the next thing she knows, the mother has gone down the carriage. The train has stopped, and she's hurrying away down the platform, literally leaving Ellen, who's the main character, sort of holding the baby. So that's the opening of the story, and then Ellen has to kind of do the right thing and make sure that the baby try to make sure the baby's reunited with her mother, and obviously think lots of things. It being a thriller, lots of things happen sort of before that can take place, and she discovers that the baby is kind of the key to a series of terrible crimes which are unsolved at the beginning of the story. Anyway, so yeah, that's the kind of that's the book. It's quite as Chris was saying, it's quite fast paced. It's I like to write stories, the sort of things that I like to read myself. So I'm a big thriller reader, and I've always loved thrillers. So yeah, hopefully it's the kind of book you once you started it, you don't want to stop.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim.
Right.
Now I'm going to start with a few questions, and as I say, if you want to add any in, then just write them into the chat section. Trust Me is a great book that gets you gripped within them first few pages. This is something that's quite hard to achieve. Do you spend a lot of time rewriting and working on these first few pages?
Yeah, I think the first chapters, a first chapter in particular, is really important. And I want to. You got to try and do quite a lot in that first chapter. And my chapters tend to be quite short. Although the first chapter of Trust Me is maybe a little bit longer than I would normally do, but you got to try and achieve quite a lot. So you got to get your characters established, get that situation established, and get people interested enough so that they want to read on and turn the page and go to the next chapter. So yeah, it does take quite a lot of work. I mean, very occasionally I'll write something. I might write an opening paragraph which is, stays the same all the way through all the kind of editing process. But much more often it's worked on and trimmed, and you got. Cause I'm always trying to sort of make things the best they can be, and it's normal that my first drafts are not always that similar to what the final drafts end up looking like. So I mean, I've read somewhere that the most important 2 lines in a book are the first line and the last line, and that's always kind of stuck in my head a little bit in terms of because the first line obviously pulls you in, and the last line is the last page can be kind of part of your abiding memories of the book once you've finished it. So
no, I really like the fact that from the first page I was absolutely hooked, and as I say, I've read the whole 400 pages in a day. Just couldn't put it down. I was like, oh, I want to know, and so many twists and turns all the time.
Brilliant, thank you.
Without wanting to give too much away, because obviously it's only been out a couple of days now, so many of our viewers may not have quite finished the book yet. Did you always have the ending that you had for the book?
Yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, the ending was the same. It tends to be that with the other books I've written, I always have a reasonable idea of what the ending is. I don't roughly know where I'm going to start, where I'm going to finish. All the stuff in the middle is where all the kind of the work comes in. But I think I had a quite a good idea of where I wanted to end up with this one, and it wasn't quite as I initially thought, but it was quite similar to how it first came to me. So yeah, but it's interesting because again, you have the sort of it's quite a long process, the writing. So it can, through the course of writing a story, it can change lots of things, and it can change how you envisage the ending as well. So yeah, without giving away any spoilers, I did kind of had a reasonable idea of where I wanted to end up with the story. Yeah,
no, it kept me going right to the end. I kept going between who I thought it was, and where I thought it was all uncovering. And yeah, as I say, it kept me going right to the end, and I really couldn't see which way it was going to go.
Good. I feel like I've done my job then.
Yes, yeah, no, it was a really good book. I have to say, I was a little bit angry when I finished chapter 68 and thought, oh no, it can't be one of those books that ends there like films where you read it all and you go, no. And then luckily I turned over and saw there was chapter 69. So I have to say, I really like the ending, but good. Wouldn't have liked you quite so much if you'd finished it at chapter 68.
Good. I'm glad I wrote that last chapter then.
Yes. One of the things that I really, really loved was your acknowledgement and letter at the end of the book, where you tell us where you got the idea for the book, how you researched it, and why your character was called Ellen. Often readers are left pondering about these things, so it was great to have this piece from you. Is this something you always do?
Yeah, I mean, I have done. I'm trying to think now. I think I've done it in all the books so far. So it's often kind of a single, one idea or one kind of conversation or one thought that I'll have that will be the starting point for a story. And I think when I've read books that I've liked in the past, I've always, at the end of it, I always thought, I wonder how we came up with that. I wonder what the process was, or I wonder, what was going through the person's head when they were writing this. And so I thought it'd be quite nice to include something like that in my own books. So I think once you get to the end, when I get to the end of a book, I don't want to just stop right there. I want to find out a bit more, and I want to find out a bit more about the person who's written it and where the story came from. So yeah, but it was just with this book, it was just that one sort of little nugget of an idea from I can talk about it a bit now if you like, or
yes, that's what I was going to say. Did you want to tell us a bit about some of that bit that you wrote at the end?
Yeah, so
not everyone might necessarily always read that bit.
So it's this one was just, I mean, so I live in Nottingham, and me and my family were all season ticket holders at the local ice hockey team, the Nottingham Panthers, and so we go during the season. We'll go at most weeks to home games, and we're at a game, and a few rows in front of us, below us in the sort of the stand, was a young family, a young mum and I think a grandma and a baby, and this baby was just grinning at everybody and just looking around, and it was so smiley and so kind of, obviously not interested in the actual game, but was just kind of, everybody was kind of, just absolutely transfixed by this baby. And I was just found myself thinking, well, because my kids are teenagers now. My oldest is 21, my son's 18, but I just remember thinking to myself, I wonder if I could remember what all the stuff you're supposed to do when they're babies that small, and all the things you have to remember and all the things you have to kind of think about and know. And would it come back to me, or would I be kind of like a sort of an amateur again at it? And then I thought, well, how about if I hadn't had kids and I found myself looking after this baby through circumstances sort of beyond my control, and the mum then wasn't there, and you have to take charge. And then I thought, well, okay, that's maybe quite an interesting idea to explore. And then I thought, what would be an interesting place? And obviously, if you're on a train, you can't immediately get off. So, and then it just sort of kind of developed from there. And I thought there was a few other ideas bouncing around in my head at the time about sort of issues around kind of crimes and stuff like that. And I thought, well, this could be quite an interesting idea for a story. Yeah, but that was the original kind of starting point, was that baby in the audience at the hockey game. And I've never I don't know what the baby's called or anything, but it was just it was kind of really kind of caught my eye and got my writer's brain thinking. So maybe, I think maybe the match was not very interesting at that point or something, but I don't know.
No, it's really good to sort of have that bit, because as I say, you are left wondering with all these things. Also, it was quite nice to know that you did do all the research, because I was wondering if perhaps maybe you had a police background, or what your sort of background was, to know that you'd sort of done the research into the various things. How long do you normally spend doing all your research for your novels?
I normally spend between maybe 6 to 8 weeks on planning, and I'm trying to just writing lots of notes and trying to think about how the story might work and the people, the characters. So maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and then the writing is about 4 to 5 months, something like that, for a first draft. And then after that, there's kind of various stages of editing. But it's I'm slower than some and maybe a bit quicker than others, but that's my process at the moment. And I'm in the middle at the moment of writing the next book, so that's got to be delivered by June the 1st. So I'm sort of about halfway through.
Oh. I like the way as well in the book that you weaved in all the bit about DNA and the medical knowledge, because that's something you wouldn't necessarily know. So it's quite nice the way you did that. Found that quite interesting. We have also got a little question coming at the side. What is it about writing thrillers that attracts you? And are you ever tempted to write a book in another genre?
I think thrillers just always have, certainly, for the last, 10, 20, 30 years, they've been what I sort of love to read myself. So I think when I'm thinking about a news story, I always spend a bit of time thinking about it, and if I get to the point where I think I'd quite like to read this story myself, then I think it's probably a story that I'd quite like to write as well. So it's very much the sort of thing that I enjoy reading. And other genres, I've always thought I would quite like to have a go at something historical fiction. I absolutely love Bernard Cornwell, for example. Yeah. He's just an amazing author, and all of his all the Sharp books and the sort of Uhtred books and all those, just brilliant. So yeah, maybe the historical side of things, I don't know. It's a question for me of sort of finding a bit of the history that's not been done already by someone else. But I don't know. There's probably some time period out there that's unclaimed, but I haven't found it yet.
Do you have a period you're particularly interested in?
I suppose I quite like the sort of the Roman period, but I realise there's lots of authors doing great work in that area, and I quite like the medieval stuff, Victorian as well. But it's I'm not too picky. I quite like history in general. So I would like at some point sort of find a little piece of history that I can make my own, and maybe do a series of some kind, you know, based on that piece of history.
Perhaps you could do something on lockdown.
I just read a book actually, which is kind of mentions lockdown. It's quite weird, because it's kind of like, obviously the book's written last year and it's coming out this year, but it's obviously set in 2020, and it's a good question now as to whether people are going to want to read about it, or whether they're going to want to forget about it, or, you know, I don't know. It's an interesting question as to whether how many books are going to feature lockdown.
Yes, it's a little bit raw, I think, at the moment, isn't it? You know, lots of people have been affected in some way or another, whether or not they've lost people or lost jobs or whatever. There's not anyone who's really been untouched by the whole thing. I have to say, I don't know. I think it might have to be a little way off, because there was a film produced and I didn't really enjoy it. It made me quite depressed watching it, because I think until we're out of it a bit further, it's just still a bit too raw.
Yeah. Was that Songbird?
Oh, it could have been. I can't remember what it was called now. It was one where it was set in 2023. Is that the one?
I watched that, and my wife just kind of like, we put it on, and my wife was just like rolling her eyes and saying, "You can't be serious putting this on." And I'm like, let's just watch it. But yeah, it was quite bleak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But anyway, if we go back to the beginning a little bit, what inspired you to become an author, and what was the first idea for your first book? How did it all begin?
I suppose I always liked English at school, and I always liked writing, and I was sort of gravitated into, you know, jobs that involved that. So I was a journalist for a while, and then I worked in communications, which is a kind of a related role. So I'd always sort of had the idea that at some point I would try to write a book, but then I got to the age I've got to my mid-30s, and I've never actually you know, seriously tried to do it. So I thought, well, I might as well have a go now. And then I thought, well, if I can try and write every day, if I write half an hour, 45 minutes every day, I can, you know, over a period of time, I could maybe put together a sort of full-length novel. So most novels, I didn't know this at the time, but most commercial fiction at the moment is you're looking between 85,000 100,000 words. So I wrote this first book, which came in at about 160,000 words, I think, which was far too long. And that was set in America, actually. It didn't get published, but it was set in America, and was inspired a little bit by some of the stories I covered when I was a journalist. I was a science reporter in London, and so that kind of had some crime stuff in it, and it had some sort of DNA type sciencey things in it as well. It was called In Plain Sight, and that was my first book that went out to publishers in 2013, and didn't actually get any offers. But then after that, I wrote the next book, which was called Lies, which was my first published book, which came out in 2017. So it's quite a long process, a long road to sort of to get to that first book.
Getting published, as you mentioned, is quite a difficult task, whereas, as you say, with lots of writers writing several before they actually get published. Do you have any tips out there for budding authors?
I think that what I tried to do was just try and carve out a piece of time every day, whether that was sometimes in the evening or sometimes in the morning before I went to work. Sometimes, you know, I'll be on a bus or a coach or something or whatever, but try and find a little piece of time every day when you can just write, because you can't get better at something if you're not doing it. You know, it's like anything really, whether it's, you know, running or cooking or whatever or cycling is. You're only going to get better at it if you're doing it, if you're practicing it. So I think if you can practice, that's really really important. And there are some really good books out there. So if you can get On Writing by Stephen King is really good. That may be something that you might have in the library. I suspect it's probably really popular with readers, but that's his kind of, it's part memoir and part all of his kind of advice on writing and how he got into it. But I suppose the thing I would also say to people is, I try to, you try and read, yeah, you can read for pleasure, but you're also trying to read books with your kind of writer's head on. So when you're reading something, you try to think about why, if it's really good and you're enjoying it, why you're enjoying it. And if it's not very good and you're not, then why is that as well? So try to think about what works in terms of the stuff you're reading and maybe what doesn't work so well. And then you can start to sort of learn and incorporate some of those things into your own writing. So that's always helped me. And the other thing obviously is, don't give up, which is because you're going to get a lot of, well, most of the time people in the process of trying to get the book published will get a lot of knockbacks, and I'm certainly no exception to that. So you just got to sort of keep plugging away and keep trying to improve.
Do you have a favourite of your novels that you've written, and if so, why?
I would say this is a bit like the which one's your favourite child question, but
yeah, I suppose it must be a bit difficult. I love them all the same.
I said that at my launch last week, and my son was sitting over there, and he just shouted out, "It's me!" But because he says he's his favourite child. But anyway, I mean, can I give you a slightly cop-out answer?
Yeah, of course you can.
I mean, they're all special to me for different reasons, I suppose. Lies was the first book for me. Then there was 29 Seconds, which was kind of the big fear after the first one was that was it a one-off? Was that kind of a fluke? Yeah. And so the next one is kind of proof that you can do it again. And then The Holiday obviously was picked up by the Richard and Judy book club, so that was kind of amazing to see the boost that gives it. The Catch was my sort of 2020 lockdown book, which was everybody was kind of thinking what we're going to do, and it came out in the middle of lockdown, and it's still people still seem to quite like it, and it's still kind of got a lot of positive feedback. And then the Trust Me, this one is being my first hardback. That's kind of quite a special moment because it's a bit of a milestone for me as an author. So I don't know. I mean, to be honest, the favorite one often is just the one you've just finished. So probably right now it's Trust Me. Maybe if you ask me in a year's time, it might be the next book, but because that's the one that's sort of in my head and all the characters are in my head and the stories in my head. So yeah, that's not a very direct answer, really, is it? But yeah.
No, it's hard to pick a favourite. I get that. You'll like to know, though, that in our libraries, in our ebooks, it's really got loads of requests on it, your new novel at the moment.
Brilliant.
So there's lots of people keen to get it. If you turned any of your books into novels, do you think any of them would lend themselves particularly to that? And are there any sort of characters you think you would like to play? Any actors you would like to play certain characters?
What, into films or TV shows?
Yes, yeah, either TV series or a film.
I mean, I would love to see Trust Me on the screen, because I think it would work really well, probably as a because I think with Netflix and Amazon and all those things now, there's so much more potential for TV dramas. So it'll probably be that, and it's so it's got a female protagonist who is quite very capable, very kind of she's quite tall, she's sort of no nonsense in some ways, so I probably in my head I was probably be thinking of someone like Vicky McClure or someone like that from Line of Duty, or Keeley Hawes maybe, I'm not sure, someone like that. Yeah, but the Holiday is actually being filmed. The filming's starting next week on that for a 4-part TV drama. So that's kind of a new thing for me. But that's very exciting to sort of see that all taking shape and looking at the scripts and what have you. So yeah, I do know some of the cast members for that, but I've been told that I'm not allowed to say any of them. So I can't blurt them out.
Can we ask when it's hitting the screens?
I'm not sure. It's filming. The film's starting next week. It'll be a 7-week shoot, and then I believe it's going to be on Channel 5. So they will give the the content to Channel 5, I think late summer, and then so I guess it could be on either back end of this year or maybe early next year. But I'll certainly be, as soon as I know I have a date for that, I'll certainly be sort of, you know, shouting it from the rooftops, because that'll be you know, a brilliant.
And you say that's a 4-part series, yes. That one, yeah. There's quite a lot of the thrillers nowadays are on these series, aren't they? There's lots of them that have been televised, and it seems to be a genre that's really getting popular. You know, crime and thriller writers are one of our most issuing books really in the libraries nowadays. Can I ask who your favourite author is?
This is another tricky one. I think probably I would say it might be Michael Connolly.
Yeah.
Or it could be Harlan Coben. I've read loads of Stephen King as well in the past, so he'd probably up there in my top 10. Gillian Flynn, you know, Gone Girl and Sharp Objects and all that stuff. Blimey, I don't know. Yeah, there's Tana French as well. There's lots and lots of them. I suppose I don't really have like one favourite, but I have lots of go-to authors that I'll dip into and dip in and out of.
Can I ask you a bit about how you do your writing? I see you're in your summer cabin there. Do you go out sort of 9 till 5 every day, or do you go out, you know, how do you sort of structure your day to come up with your word count?
Yeah, I try to get down to the cabin every morning about 8:15. It's at the end of my garden, so it's a pretty short journey from my house. It's only 14 steps, so that's good. Yeah, so I'll get down here about 8:15. I'll try and write till lunchtime, so it's 4 or 5 hours, and have a bit of lunch, have a break, maybe do some exercise, come back, maybe do another hour, or depending on how the morning's gone, I might do another hour or a bit more, and some editing and looking back on what I've done, and then the sort of mid to late afternoon, I'll just do more of the admin stuff and emails and that kind of thing. So I try to reserve the mornings for writing, and that's because that's sort of my best time. Really, my time in my brain is sort of works the best, seems to work the best. And if I'm drafting like I'm doing at the moment, writing a first draft, I tend to try and do about 1,200 words a day. If I can get to that, I feel, you know, satisfied. If I can, sometimes I'll do more than that, and certainly if there's a deadline coming up, I'll probably do more. If I've done less than that, I always feel a bit, you know, guilty, and I feel like I've not really done enough. And there are lots of authors who do a lot more than that. Some of them are doing, you know, 2,500, 3,000 words a day. But I've never been that quick at writing, and I've never been, you know, even with like doing exams at school and stuff, I've always been like the person who didn't quite finish at the end of the 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever it was. And you know, so I'm not the fastest, but if I can do my 1,200 in a day, then I feel like I'm probably on track to make my deadline.
Do you find some days you get a bit of a writer's block?
Some days I just get distracted by other things, or I allow myself to be distracted. If I get sort of stuck on a certain chapter, I'll tend to, because I don't really write completely in sequence, I'll kind of move back and forth through the manuscript. So if I get stuck on a particular chapter or scene or sequence, I'll just tend to just move to a different part, or, you know, go to a different bit of dialogue or something like that. So I don't have too much of an issue with the writer's block, because I can always find something that I can that I can write about. So it's more about just knuckling down and turning off all my notifications and turning off my social media and stuff, and getting on with it, really, to avoid getting distracted. So
how have you found writing in lockdown? You know, as you say, with distractions, have you found having, you know, your family round hampering the situation, or?
It's been, I think it's been fine for me. I mean, it was quite weird because this, Trust Me, was written mostly during, well, lots of it was written during the first lockdown last spring and early summer. So, having the kids here, and my wife was working from home, and it was different. And obviously, at lunchtime, normally I'll kind of wander out the cabin and the cats will be there, and, just be me and them. Whereas, for the last year, it's kind of everybody's been here sort of thing. And, my son's back at school now, but, yeah, it was a bit different for me, but it was probably less different for me than for lots of other people, because like I said, I'm really lucky and I can work from home. But if anything, it was good because I could kind of come out and bounce ideas off my wife, and ask them things and talk about things, and they would kind of give me a little bit of feedback on stuff. And yeah, so it was because I know some people, obviously a lot of people had a really tough time in lockdown, but because I had one of my kids was at university and had come back, and the other one's, like I say, he's 18, so he's I wasn't really doing, there's nothing I can't really homeschool him because he's doing things, his maths I've stopped understanding about 8 or 9 years ago, so I can't yeah, I was just kind of carrying on really, and carrying on with what I would normally do, with the added sort of bonus of having a bit more company during the day.
Yeah, I don't think I could have been a writer in this time. I normally had one toddler stuck on my head, and I couldn't manage with the year 2 maths, so I'm not sure I would have been able to write many books.
Yeah.
In the camera, we've got your book behind you, your new novel, Trust Me.
I'm just going to put the light on because I think it's getting a bit dark. Sorry.
Yeah, it's probably getting a bit dark in mine as well.
There we go. Yes,
now,
sorry.
How much say do you get over your titles and your covers, and have you liked them?
Yeah, the title is a kind of a joint decision, really. I always have a working title. So the working title for this one, which I knew was never going to be used, was just the baby. So obviously, because of the baby's kind of, pivotal to the story. And I talked to my publisher and say, look, this is what I'm calling it, but I know this is probably not what you want to call it. And then I think I came up with something. I came up with something around trust, but it wasn't Trust Me. It was something like Trust. It wasn't Trust No One, because that's a book that's kind of quite a well-known book by Harlan Coben. It's already out there. So anyway, I came up with something then they came back and said, well, how about this? And so it is a conversation about the title, and they'll come up with a cover. They'll sort of knock it around in-house until they think they've got one that they really like. So sometimes they'll present me with a kind of one option. Sometimes in the past they've given me 2 or 3 options, or different color variant of the options, that sort of thing. So, but I think, I have a lot of confidence in them, and in terms of they know what looks good and what works. And I'm not really that good at sort of the visual stuff and pictures and things. So I'm normally happy to sort of not leave it to them, but kind of be guided a little bit by them on what they think will work and what will stand out on the shelf. So and yeah, with other titles, it's been so, The Holiday I had about 3 or 4 working titles for that, and when I submitted it, it was something, I think it was Don't Look Down when I submitted it, and then they came back and they'd had a conversation there, and then one of them just said, well, I know this is going to sound obvious, but why don't we just call it The Holiday? And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I knew there's a film called The Holiday with Jack Black and Kate Winslet.
Yes.
And that was the sort of thing that instantly came into my head. But I thought, well, okay, that was quite a few years ago, and probably that it's it's sort of, the titles just did exactly what it said on the tin, sort of thing. So yeah, it's a kind of a collaboration, I suppose, to figure out covers and titles, and yeah, we kind of, you have to sort of arrive at a point where everybody's reasonably happy.
You say you're working on your next book at the moment with your June deadline. Can you tell us a little bit about this book, or is it under strict secrecy?
No, it's yeah, so it's another thriller, and it'll be out next year, sort of date to be determined. I'm about halfway through at the moment, so I'm about just over 50,000 words through. and I've got to get in by June the 1st. So it's a kind of a family-based story about a family of four, and primarily the sort of the father and son. And the son goes out with his friends one Saturday night at the end of year 11, end of GCSEs. They'll go out on a Saturday, and there's a party, and then 5 of them go on from the party up into the woods, the place where the teenagers often go on a night. So 5 of them go up to the woods, and only 4 of them come out. And the son is one of the 4 that comes out, and it then becomes clear that something bad has happened, and this 5th teenager who has gone missing can't be found. And the son, was there, and the parents, the dad in particular, starts to think, well, okay, what do I need to do to protect him and potentially cover up this crime that's happened? And so the working title of the story is The Alibi, because the alibi is obviously the parents provide an alibi for their son. They say he was home when he was actually out, and all those kind of things. So it's a kind of about, how far would a parent, or should a parent go to bend the law and bend the rules if they think if they're trying to protect the child. So yeah, and it's got it's kind of at that point now where I'm really getting into the second half, and it's quite a tough part of the drafting process, but I can sort of see the end in sight now. So yeah, hopefully I'll hit my deadline.
Has it got lots of twists and turns?
Yeah, absolutely tons. Yeah.
Have you got lots of other ideas for other books in the future? Do you think you'll be got lots more in you?
I have got, I have a file on the computer where I kind of keep a note of ideas that come to me. So I'll normally, if something comes to me during the day, I'll make a note on my phone, or I have a notebook, or I might write it on a Post-it note, but that's always not a very good idea because I tend to lose them, or they go behind the sofa or something. So I'll normally put something on the phone, and then I collate. I've got a big kind of rolling file of ideas on my computer where some of them are just, it might be a link to a news story, or it might be a sort of 1 or 2 paragraphs of kind of a what if scenario, which I think is quite interesting. So some of them will probably make short stories in the future. Some of them I hope will make kind of full-length novels. And there's lots of things in there. Some of them will probably, I'm sure, will never see the light of day, but it's always I like to try and have lots and lots of things to sort of dip into and choose from, and it's good to have it kind of, I like I think when these ideas kind of get in your head and they bounce around in your head, and things are happening, I think, in your subconscious without you necessarily being aware of it, and you can you find that these stories have sort of developed themselves without you even realizing it. And then one day, or later in the year, when I'm looking at the next book, I'll start to go through that file and pick one that I think or pick 2 or 3 that I think have got potential to be a full-length novel. And then but there's I think there's a few in there with potential. So but I need to get this one out of the way first. So
have you ever as well had an idea for a book and then really been annoyed because you've then realized that somebody else has already written it?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly I'm sure that's happened, because I think lots of stories are kind of, lots of stories have been done in one form or another before, and it's just a question of sort of putting a new angle on it, or kind of taking a new approach to it. But I think that is kind of every author's worst nightmare, and I have heard about that happening to people. My book's coming out in September and it's about X, and then you discover that someone else's book is coming out in August, and it's kind of, the plot is almost identical. So it does happen, and I think with obviously the thriller market is quite a crowded place, so I think it's probably inevitable that some books are going to have some similarities to others, but I don't think it's normally just an unfortunate sort of accident that it happens. But I mean, I haven't, no one's pulled me up on it yet, but maybe it'll happen in the future.
Also, is it weird when you've got a new book out and you can't go round the bookshops and doing all the sort of normal publicity you would do.
It is really weird, because obviously normally I'll have a kind of a launch in the local bookshop, and then you go out and meet people, and you'd be sitting at tables and signing them, and so this year I've done lots of signing book plates, which are the kind of stickers that go in the front of new books, and they get sent off to the bookshop, and so there's kind of a way of doing it. But it is obviously a bit strange to be doing it all kind of virtually. And obviously I went into Asda on the day this book came out. Obviously went into my local Asda and went to the books section, and I was like, where is it? And then we had to my wife asked the lady who was busily stacking all the books on to say, well, where have you got this book? And she was she had a lot of books to put up on that day, because it was a sort of new book publication day. But and then I went back the following day and it was there, and I was very happy and took a picture and all the rest of it. But it's a strange old time for books. But I think lots of people have been reading during lockdown, and lots of people have, if anything, then maybe been reading more than normal during lockdown, and that's I think that's obviously a good thing for authors, for libraries, and for bookshops. So
yeah, it's just nice to have that little bit of escapism, to come away from the real world and get lost in a book. So yeah, I think it does help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, it was lovely to talk to you this evening. I don't think we've got any more questions coming up. Is there anything else you would like to talk to our viewers about?
I don't think so. No, just like I say, I've got 5 books. This is the 5th one. I think you can probably get most of them through your library. I don't know. Yeah, you can follow me on. You can find me on social media, and I've got a website which is tmlogan.com if you want to find out a bit more about my books or about me. But thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me on the broadcast. And I look forward to speaking to you again at some point in the future when I have another book.
Thank you. Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, your books have got lots of requests on them. We haven't actually got the hard copy in just yet, but we are expecting it soon. We've got copies of the eBook version, which is on our site, Belinda. As I say, we've got quite a long request list, so while our viewers are waiting, they may have to read one of your other ones. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And
hope the rest of the book goes well, and I can't wait to watch the holiday on the TV.
Yeah, I'm the same. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Yes. Well, thank you ever so much, and hopefully when the libraries are back open, you'll be able to come and see us in person.
Yeah, I would love to come down and do it sort of for real. That'll be excellent.
Okay. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.